overlay that connects the different cloud service providers, and we eliminate the gray zones like connectivity between those providers, like security, like traffic management, for example, if you have the add-ons like web application firewall, whatever. So our end user gets the single platform with the 30 service providers across the 4 different continents, where they can create, manage, migrate, if it's needed, from one provider to another, the different virtual infrastructures. On the other hand, they can actually provision their own private infrastructure, cloud infrastructure in our platform. So they have the single powerful management tool. Right now we have a subscription model, and we have 100+ customers that already use our platform, including the global ones like Liebherr, for example, from Germany, or Commerzbank from Germany as well. So, and we are expanding right now into the Western markets, providing our platform to the enterprises. So our target sector is enterprises, and actually we have right now the scope of add-ons like the security, the analytics, and recommendation tools for the companies that can help them to manage their cloud infrastructures in the right way. So I think it was an easy one to understand. I'm so sorry that I have these technical issues and I don't have any deck with me. So if you have any questions, just please ask.
All right. So if there are any questions, feel free to ask Dmitry right now.
So what would be my main advantage to subscribe on your platform instead of contracting with AWS and those providers across the world?
Actually, right now, if you're the enterprise, right now you don't use the single AWS because you have the different environments. You have the production environment, which is not AWS for sure. Probably you have the VMware cloud or something. On the other hand, you have your own development environment in-house where you have your DevOps work on the application. So it built basically on OpenStack, which is different from VMware. On the other hand, you have your backup or something which is somewhere else in a third country.
School, and my current main company right now is 14 years old, and I've been running that, and that is, we basically staff sales reps in big box retail stores. So that was pre-COVID, and it was very much a manual-based business of how you recruit, train, and manage sales reps. And then we've also been building up a technology company and ERP software that helps companies that have frontline staff automate the whole workflow of managing staff from onboarding to offboarding and everything in between. And so everything what I'm describing now is pre-COVID, and I will wait till the rest of this actual session to talk about, well, where were we before and where are we now? Because at one point it looked like Swaroop's background, with everyone could see, looks beautiful. And so I'm excited just to share what we've been up to and what changes we've had.
Thank you. And it's high time for Swaroop to share the background with everybody. So please introduce yourself, Swaroop.
Thanks, Nadya. Hi, I'm Swaroop. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I started about 16 years ago. I live a very nomadic life between San Francisco, Bangalore, and more recently, Toronto. Of course, due to the nature of what's going on right now, I am staying put in Bangalore for a while. My company is in the blockchain space. We are building a developer tool that allows any developer without any blockchain experience to build and ship with just a few lines of code. Yeah, and looking forward to the rest of the discussion, where I'll be happy to give more inputs on what we're doing.
Thank you, Swaroop. And Mike? Mike, we don't hear you somehow.
I'm Mike Garnett, and I've been an entrepreneur sort of my entire life. I started with sort of an import coffee business and sort of moved on to hockey leagues, and I got my first real kick at tech in university when I was suggested to evolve into the tech space because it can scale more. So I had I started a company called Bay Street Labs, where we created the world's first AI-powered financial audit platform. And I moved into clean technology, where I was helping out Lime Bike, as it was called at the time, to sort of get off the ground, and now the founder and CEO of a mobility platform called SwiftRide, where we help people get paid to drive to and from work while carpooling with their coworkers.
Thank you, Mike. And Gianpaolo?
Yes, hello, everyone. Gianpaolo Parigi, venture capitalist, former investment banker, and serial entrepreneur, 30 years in business, spent nearly equally between the US and the European Union, with a lot of activity and deal making also on emerging markets, actually throughout my entire career. Primarily the Commonwealth of Independent States, Central Asia, China, Southeast Asia, Pacific, all the way down to Australia, India, Emirates, South Africa. And with a keen interest in technology that started when I was principal in a VC firm in Silicon Valley for about 10 years. And that is now being rounded up to a more global firm. So I'm really keen to delve more into deep tech as an investor and advisor. Thank you for having me, moderating this illustrious guests. Shall we start with Dolan, going in by seniority?
Okay, Dolan, I think it's your turn. as far as we heard from Gianpaolo.
Josh, you're muted.
Yeah, is it me, or sometimes are VC people hard to understand? I don't know if it's the video or if it's VC. That's my joke on the VC industry, by the way. Sorry.
Yeah,
good job, dude. Nice start, man. So I appreciate that, Gianpaolo. I caught you say Dolan, and I caught you say by seniority. So I'm not sure if it's age or gray hair or what that's about. But I'm really interested in today's conversation and to kind of to hear from you guys, because I think one of the challenges that there are a lot of challenges that people that I'm seeing when I'm talking with clients and other organizations around words, and they don't know what the hell they mean. And it's, when people talk about disruption, they don't know how to disrupt, and they're trying to figure it out. A lot of them are just trying to figure out how to pay bills and keep themselves going, so they can't get to disruption yet. and Mike kind of hinted at this earlier, so I don't want to hear this story, but there are a bunch of overused words out there right now. And I think one of the overused words that we have that I hear a lot is it used to be paradigm, and then it shifted from paradigm to mindset and pivot. Those kind of paradigm, mindset, and pivot are three big words that you see wandering around out there. And a lot of people don't understand what those three things are and what they really mean, and then kind of what really disruptions, effective and productive disruptions all about. So I'm really interested in your feedback. There's a couple of my clients. One of my client was of all things, and they made their money by doing live events. That was his primary way of generating revenue. And we've been able to kind of get through a pivot to move to virtual events and do it successfully and do it very, very quickly. And which is a challenge, but that does involve mindset, and it does involve pivoting and pulling people along. So I'm really curious about what you guys have got to say about that. So just to kind of kick the thinking off, I think, today.
All right, Josh, are you ready?
Yeah. Do you want me to answer just where I'm seeing challenge and pivot and everything like that?
Yeah, let's start with funny words.
Okay, well, yeah, for me, what I'm seeing really is everything just given that, you can't really be physically in close contact, everything's moving digital at this point. So that's really where all the opportunities lie, is how are different industries, or even the I guess supply chain within industries, changing and digitizing. And that's really where all the opportunity lies, unless you want it short term. Everyone and their dog at this point is selling PPE. So all my friends who weren't selling PPE, everyone's selling PPE. It's the new, I guess, whether it's like branded promotional products or whatnot, everyone's selling PPE. So in the short term, you want opportunity, sell PPE. Otherwise, to me, it's really about the digitization. And what's really great, I think, for most entrepreneurs is that, anyone who could shift quickly or who was already ahead of the curve. So I had a bunch of people that were doing video-based telehealth, already a little bit ahead of the curve when it comes to technology. This is where all the opportunity lies. I mean, I'm in the physical retail space, and we're seeing all the retailers scrambling like you've never seen anyone scramble for e-commerce and what that looks like. So from a retail standpoint, it is more around e-commerce, but every company we're seeing is, how do you create digital workflows? What does digitization mean to your business? And I think that's where I'm seeing a lot of opportunity, and where it's great for entrepreneurs. You're a big company, you can't pivot, you can't develop quickly, you just don't have those capabilities. Whereas smaller entrepreneurs, more nimble, have the opportunity, where there's now all this new opportunity that did not exist before, that now someone's going to fill that. There's now new demand that did not exist, and someone's going to fill it. And it's going to be the first person to be able to create products in that category that's going to be able to really build off of that. So that's where I'm seeing a lot of the opportunity, is everything digital.
Thank you. And Swaroop, now would you share some of the opportunities you found, or maybe the situation you have at the background? Can you comment it a bit more?
Sure. So, I mean, I've always been in tech. So for me, it's actually been a journey of going away from the whole remote thing and meeting people. That's what I've been working on and improving. So it's kind of interesting where the world is doing the opposite now. But even though I'm hearing a lot about where people are trying to move, at least non-tech enabled businesses, like what Josh said, to digitize, the challenge for tech businesses has been, is if you're not addressing the need of the hour. So obviously we can't be manufacturing PPEs, but what else are you making, right? So if you're building something cool, so like for our, to take an example of my company, we're in a space which is still very nascent. Edtech is aware of that, being in the career space. But it's, it's a lot which is still not mainstream, right? So it's very difficult in this situation because people pay very little attention to those things, because all they want is they want their immediate needs. I think that's the biggest challenge, even as a tech company. And I do see for friends and other entrepreneurs who are in the non-technology aspect, they're definitely speeding up or accelerating their plans that they had. And I think that's both a good and a bad. It'll be interesting to see what plays out in the next few years. I don't think we'll see the effect right now, at least in this year.
Thank you. And Mike?
I wanted to echo a little bit of what Josh was saying there in terms of on the opportunities front. I think that to be an entrepreneur, you really are capturing. You're moving quickly on opportunities that are available to you. And in this particular time frame, as difficult and as challenging as it is, large corporations are scaling back on marketing dollars and R&D efforts, which opens up new opportunities for us to, as smaller players, trying to be able to move up upstream and up market. The opportunities are there to be able to move more quickly into those spaces, and there's because of a lot of the unfortunate layoffs that have been happening, there's new talent that's available to be able to recruit some top level talent. So if you're a little bit savvy in terms of saving money and cutting costs, you can really capture the opportunity to grow and move quickly in this very difficult and challenging time frame. But from on a lot of the different founders that I've been talking to, it is, you know, everybody's in the same sort of boat. It's tough, and you know, I couldn't think of another way to find sort of a way to disrupt every single business, which is, you know, this COVID it's finding flaws in every business. It's finding flaws in healthcare systems, like pretty much every single. It's really forcing people to move forward and move more digitally, you know. And this is it's a terrible thing, but it's in terms of everything that's going on the health side. But it's really progressing the ways that people have to innovate, because it's forcing everybody to innovate and move their business forward. And I feel for the event space. In particular, Dolan, just because of the fact that you know, I have family members that are in the event space, and certainly within retail as well. Like, you guys have just been hit so hard, and it's going to be very interesting to see sort of that next evolution in terms of how the event and retail is going to adapt to this. But I'll leave it from there so we can move on for the next question.
Thank you, Mike. Gianpaolo, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, all of you are international business people. And I have it's a provocation, and it's really a marketing question that I have, but it has some geopolitical implications. So I think we want to address those. We're very curious to hear your opinion on that. And the question is the following. I mean, we went to bed before COVID with the United States leading the pack. China, you know, maybe the best follower, European Union a little bit in the doldrums. Now we are slowly moving out of the outbreak situation and going towards a new normal. And we see that we are at a face-off between the United States and China, possibly involving other countries. And the European Union yesterday just licensed a pack or relief of about 2.5 trillion, all in all, combined what they licensed it today and what they had already prepared a couple of weeks before. And about 300 billions, more or less, will be earmarked towards companies that will be capable of dealing with climate change and renewables and digital transformation. So, and this is only to account the three largest superpowers in the world. So I would like to hear from you in terms of marketing and impact at a micro level, not because your companies are small, but because, you know, even if you were a multinational, it would be still at a micro level. What would you see that needs to be done differently today compared or as opposed to when we, as I say, went to bed before COVID struck? What's Mike, you want to start? I
don't quite follow the question.
Well, the question is basically, we're talking about a world that should go towards an economy of sharing rather than owning, and a cooperation rather than competition. But politics, or what appears to be politics, be above the surface, seems to go in quite a different direction in terms of confrontation, in terms of trade wars that have implications also.
Yeah.
And let's hope that they just remain what they are, and maybe they even can be reduced to discussions rather than wars. But I think that this carries some implications for all business around the world. But technologies being global by definition, I think somebody shuffled the full deck of cards, and I think we need to reconfigure our marketing strategies. What do you see? Is it clear now?
Yeah, I totally get the question. It's a great question. On the geopolitical level, I mean, that's way above my pay grade. But I've always believed that that the best ways to be able to move forward as a founder and as a company is really to find the right partners and the right communities to really help push and propel. We're in a, businesses are there to compete and to grow and to but on the marketing side of things, I'd have to say that there's a lot of, I think that the way that I position it is that there are ways right now in terms of different partnerships that we're working on within our own company that are leveraging the resources of another company to be able to actually help propel us both forward, because we can't really with limited resources and the fact is you really have to, there in the digital economy, there are no borders, and there will not be any borders sort of moving forward. In my personal opinion, I think that there is this pushback in terms of a political fight to be the superpowers of the world, but I just think that the sort of the millennial generation, they're more about thinking about sustainability, the planet, and just sort of working in co-opetition to be able to move and push forward. I don't know if I answered the question, but those are the things that are coming to my mind about that at the moment.
Thank you. And Josh?
So I'll try to answer it based on what I understood the question to be, which is, with international almost trade wars going on, yet we almost need more collaboration now more than ever. How's that impacting a local company like your own? That's what I'm understanding the question to be. So that's what I'm going to answer. And Gianpaolo, what was really great is even just in this, you expanded my viewpoint on how I see certain things. So my entire focus has been on, to date has really been on the no borders when it comes to workers. So with the shift of working from home, my whole accounting department already is in China, and we have half of our recruiting team is in India. So we had already shifted to really more of that work from home. And my whole mindset's really been on the supply chain and even in employees, you don't need to work in the city and be in that home office anymore, that really it becomes a global thing. And where is the right place to find people? You no longer need it to be in your local city. So there's just more of that expansion there. And I don't, we're doing work in China, and Canada's caught in the middle between the US and China right now. So we're actually being thrown into the fight, and we don't even want to. It hasn't impacted my decision. I am aware that there could be some challenges, but I don't think my company will be impacted by Canada-China relations. What you asked is a great question, though, is from the sales side, will we be impacted for more opportunity to actually sell more globally? And I think it's a great question, and one that I honestly haven't considered myself yet. So we sell only into Canada, and my natural instinct as we are expanding internationally was to go to the US, because that's really what Canadians do. We look to our big brother down south, and that's where we sell to. But I think that the question you asked will allow me to actually reframe some of my future sales strategies and say, hey, if my suppliers are all over the world, why can't I also have customers all over the world? So I think that on the supply side, I mean, if you're not shipping products, I don't see an issue with technology or services being international. And we actually should focus more international now than even before. Certainly on the supply side, whether it's employees or vendors, I think it's just, this has only opened up things even further.
Thank you so much, Josh. One of the missions of our Startup Leaders Club is just to bring this kind of inspirations and new ideas due to the collaboration and sharing insights from different industries and people from different backgrounds and different parts of the world. So it's great that you already have one more idea to move on with. And Swaroop, could you also share your thoughts?
I think this is it's quite interesting in my view, because for us being a technology business and having a life where I travel between like two of the major countries, and more recently in Canada, because I was just trying to figure out where the business needs to be. So it's not just marketing, whether it's sales of a product. So for us, it starts with just purely building the credibility. So right now, because we are doing everything online, we've kind of on par with competitors who are much more funded, who used to throw parties, and blockchain parties are known to be even more extravagant than corporate parties. And it would be really difficult for a smaller player to do that. So now my marketing costs have actually gone down because I can do everything online. So we just announced a boot camp, which pretty much anyone can reach out to and take part in it. And then, I think we're going to discuss a bit more about fundraising later, but I think that was another big thing, like showing my face. And it's both a pro and a con, because I feel the difference was like somebody like me who had built the connections over the past 10 years, I could go there and sort of interact and network with people. That's something which is still a big challenge online, and I think that's part of the marketing. That requirement's kind of gone away, so it's both good and bad. So in a way, it hurts, it brings everybody on the same level, and I think it will be interesting whether Gianpaolo, I think the one bit that we mentioned, what happens when countries are sort of fighting with each other, will that actually affect any of the employees? So I think as long as there are no sanctions like we have with North Korea or a US company, it should be okay. Hopefully we don't reach there. I did see something yesterday from Donald Trump, but I'm going to not bring that up in this discussion.
Gianpaolo, you wanted to add something?
Yes, well, thank you all for this very precious insight from the cockpits of your companies. Because I think, at the end of the day, we investors need to know how our target investees would deal with an emergency situation. And let's hope that we don't have to go to that, but we need to have a contingency plan in place as a net of any propaganda and demagogy of the individual countries, which we hope remains just that. But if the scenario dramatically changes, even without getting into war, because wars are not fought with weapons anymore at this level, they're fought with finance, with natural resources. But still, trade wars are already inflicting damages to every economy. And of course, we are, part and parcel. We are the individual components of the economy. So we need to understand what's our plan B and possibly even plan C if anything goes berserk in a way that we had not anticipated in the last 20 years. And thank you for your commentary. Of course, those are open-ended questions. It's not that any of us can provide a formula to survive, but I think that if we can show my fellow investors that you as entrepreneurs are beginning to think of this is already bringing your company to other similarly gifted potential investee targets that we can find, because obviously to elaborating on this.
Okay, and most of you as panel discussion participants are in entrepreneurship and serial entrepreneurs for many years. So mostly started when you were teenagers and so on. And you've been through different types of crises throughout all these endeavors. Could you share maybe something you find specific in the current situation as compared to the previous crisis situations you encountered with your other business models, and what lessons you've learned to the current situation? So, and were you ready to this type of situation, if you can be ready at all to any crisis? Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite young and just had, like, my current company was 2 years old in the 2008 financial crisis. So I remember with that one, it was just, everyone was cutting left, right, and center, which felt like everyone was cutting, but in this crisis, literally just spending completely stopped. So you actually see it's where, like, people aren't paying their bills or they're holding off. We're doing the same thing, cuts, and everything happened deeper and quicker. It was like 2008 felt really quick and really deep. And, 2020 was like a nosedive. So what's interesting about this time is that from a global perspective, everyone's going through the same thing, both from a supply and a demand side, where just everything stops. And I think no one really knows what it's going to look like in terms of what's going to happen moving forward. How long is it going to take for us to get vaccines or cures and for things to get back to normal? So I think that's why we're all kind of in it together. And what I would say is, what I've learned from the previous crisis and what I'm applying to today is really what I've seen a lot of other people do, which is really quick movement. So at that initial stage, we get immediately into cash conservation and managing cash flow and liquidity. That's absolute number one, the most important aspect of what we did. And then it was, once we did that, was also creating a plan moving forward of how we're going to get through till the end of this, whether it's a year, 2 years. How do we make sure that we survive from that? And that was like essentially over a weekend, maybe 2 weeks, like 1 weekend, everything's figured out. And then over the next 2 weeks, like, how do we make sure we survive there afterwards? And that's number one. And then number two is where we start looking for the opportunities. So again, when there's change that happens in a market, like I was just explaining earlier on, it creates so much more opportunity. And actually, I'm seeing a lot of people feel really good about COVID, and almost from a business standpoint, happy that it happened. And although there's some downside and there's some negativity in the short term, in the long term, a lot of people are feeling that they're going to be better off. And I think that's how we feel as well, that we were going in a direction, and based on where things were going, I'm looking at this downtime as almost like an investment. The lost profits that we have because of this, what we would have made and where we're at now, I'm looking at it as an investment with an ROI that, because of all the changes we're making to actually improve the business and digitize and automate and just create better solutions that should have been happening already, that will end up, like, the amount of money we spend, the ROI off that, it's going to be insane. That although it was forced upon us, it wasn't a chosen investment per se. COVID hit, we didn't have a choice, we had to do it. But turning that from a loss and a negative standpoint to an investment and positive. And I know that that's how I feel about where we're at. And I have a lot of friends running different businesses that are also feeling quite optimistic about where things are going to be when they get out of it. So that's why, to us, 3 things: cut quick, have a plan to get to the other side, and then also how do you innovate and move such that you end up being in a better spot than you were beforehand.
That's great that you've shared also the kind of investor mindset and how you can turn something you're going through into opportunity. And this is a great shift also to share. Swaroop, would you also share your experience going through different types of cycles, and what do you feel different in the current situation, and what are the lessons learned?
Yeah, so I think in my first 3 to 4 years of entrepreneurship, it wasn't that difficult, purely because it was also a bootstrap company. And I think the first real crisis I faced was the 2008 financial crisis. And I was just going through college because my parents didn't want me to be an entrepreneur before I was 18. So I was attending it, and that actually gave me an excuse to quit. And then financial crisis hit. And it was not something that I planned for as a 21-year-old. But ever since then, I feel like everything that I've felt that it's been rock bottom, I found something much harder and harsher, right? So this is the journey of an entrepreneur that you will face, COVID or not. So what COVID has done is it's basically just thrown everybody out of the window, right? So it's not just a particular country that's been affected or a particular industry. So there are very few people who are probably doing better right now, right? I think that's the biggest difference. So I've almost prepared for the worst times of my life. I even have it in my notes with my co-founder about a zombie apocalypse. So I think this is still better than that. My only, I think, personal concern has been health of family members, and apart from that, we were already prepped. And as a technology company, I don't think we have much of an excuse of struggling too much. We should be taking advantage of certain opportunities. And at the stage of the company is what's, I would say that personally, it's what's helping us right now, because had we been a slightly more later stage companies, it would have been very obvious that I would have to make much harder decisions. I still had to make a few, but it could have been a lot worse for us. So not the worst crisis for me yet.
Thank you. And Mike?
In the 2008 crisis, I was still in university, but I was doing a startup at the time, and if I were to actually think, I think all of the life sort of things that I've sort of been going through up until that point, and in terms of a lot of like the school of the hard knocks, and I grew up with not having a lot of money, so I always had to be resourceful in terms of coming up with new and innovative ways to be able to get what I want without having to worry too much about like if there was anything that I wanted, I always kind of had to work for it, and so like when 2008 crisis hit, I wanted to be able to have $60 coffee, Jamaica Blue Mountain coffee, and so I had I sort of looked into the trade deals that we had, and just because I took a class that was talking about that, and so I just thought, okay, actually I can import coffee for free. I can sell it to golf courses and restaurants, and I was able to have this very expensive coffee. That was just, I never really felt the effects of the 2008 crisis, just because of the fact that I was sheltered inside of a university, but also the groups I was selling it to for the product, it didn't really I didn't really see much of an impact. For this one though, this was completely different. I did the exact same thing as Josh did. Literally over a weekend, I had to really look at our own cash flow situation, and we really had to get going into that weekend. I had to think about, okay, what are the timeframes it's going to take to be able to, like, what's the best, worst, and likely sort of scenario for COVID? It was looking like, we were on almost a day by day time frame, like looking at new information. So we didn't really know what the hell was going to be going on, and so all we really did was just like, all right, let's say this thing lasts for 10 years. What is that going to look like? Well, that's not really going to happen. We'll probably figure something out. So I figured that it's going to be, let's look at a 3-year time frame, a 1-year time frame, and a 6-month time frame. And I was just concerned about making payroll November of 2021. And how do we make sure that we can continue to make payroll in 2021? And so really all we had to do was look at it. Where do we cut costs? Can we renegotiate on certain things that we're tied into on the financial standpoint, and then really assess whether or not our corporate carpooling solution is actually going to work in a time frame when people are not allowed to go to work. And it turns out that, I guess, no, not right now. But as an opportunist, I had to look at it in terms of, okay, what's the best thing to do at the moment? Once we got our financial scenario sort of sorted out, what's the best thing we can really do moving forward with it? And that was to actually be able to provide a solution to actually help combat COVID. And so we took our carpooling solution and we entered a hackathon through the DMZ. It's an incubator here in Toronto, that they had a Hack COVID hackathon. And the premise and the idea for us was to, we needed to make radical change very quickly, and hackathon is the perfect way to do it, because in basically 48 hours we were able to basically come up with an entirely new product called Hero Pool, which was to help frontline workers get to and from the elderly care facilities and hospitals without having to worry about the impacts of those people that having to take public transit and such, because they're helping the most vulnerable people. And so although we always had the foundation of having like a people, planet, profit mindset, it really forced us to double down and think about the much larger problem as a way of like, we're not going to be making any money anyway. Let's make sure that we can help as many people as we possibly can. And it's a great way for us to be able to develop out the product and test new features, things like that. But, you know, it really made it more it helped us in so many different ways. On a team culture perspective, it is, you know, we're going to be able to look back on this, and it's as being very formative time in terms of the team really just like us against the world, trying to really, you know, just not just survive, but to thrive. And so those 2 weeks really changed the whole direction and sort of it really forced us to move much more quickly than even I would have expected us to do. And it certainly makes us much more resilient moving forward, gives us that extra level of confidence that it doesn't matter what's going to be coming up against us, we're going to be able to overcome those challenges.
Oh, that's great experience, Mike. Thank you for sharing that, especially for the customer acquisition through collaboration and sharing, and increasing your potential customer base to succeed and also to keep up with the resilience. Dolan, you also had a comment to that?
Just a couple, I think, just to go back, Gianpaolo, back to your statement earlier about, you know, US and China and the EU and Britain and kind of where all this is. You know, from a geopolitical perspective, I think the thing that we can hope is that, you know, cooler heads are going to prevail, and that we're going to figure it out. I think one of the things that is interesting around COVID is that when we, interesting, you guys mentioned being teenagers. I was a teenager a long ass time ago, and it was a very, very different day. But as coming through other kinds of events, you know, the 2008 and SARS and other things that have happened kind of through that period of time, this event is unique in and unto itself. And I think one of the things about COVID is it's almost kind of a great unifier, because it's something that we all experience together globally the same. I've known people that have, fortunately, I know no one that's passed from COVID, but I know people that have had COVID, and one of my sons was quarantined for 14 days, and knock on wood, he was son number 5. I number them, I don't name them. He came out of COVID without with a negative test. After 14 days, they finally told him he actually wasn't sick and let him out of quarantine. So I think it's a really interesting unifier from a business perspective that gives us a kind of a common bond when we're talking with, you know, as leaders amongst leaders, and when we're talking to our teams and when we're talking to our clients, there is that unifier that comes into play, because we're all experiencing, no matter where we are in our stations in life, we're all experiencing the same thing, right? We sent 7.5 billion people back to their bedroom, period. And
yeah.
And as part of that, kind of what I wanted, you guys have said some really interesting thing. I think there's some very important things that people need to pay attention to, and that is be imperfect, right? Do things fast, right? And look at your business through an acute eye, and prioritize for impact. And impact, to your point, Mike, you know, impact right now for a lot of organizations really is liquidity. It's like, how do I pay my bills and protect my people and do the things that I'm responsible for, and continue on. That's a huge challenge. This time there are lots of folks out there, and, you know, that talk about kind of where we're going and normal, the new normal. We don't know what the hell new normal is going to be yet. We just don't know. So as investors, I feel the challenge for an investor is, if I don't know what new normal is, I know the rules, I know the laws of business from a gravity perspective. I know about P&Ls, and I know about stuff, and I can look at a business, and you come from the old school of looking at a 1-3-5 plan, a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan, kind of the old Gino Wickman model. And we can't do that. Today is 1 week, you know, 1 month, 6 months, and then do you have a 2 year vision, a 4 year vision, kind of where you're going after that? And are you going to be able to survive? And then kind of the last thing is, I really liked some of the comments you guys made, and Josh, I think you mentioned it about partnerships. I've been blessed because I come from a background where I've been able to go out and build global partnerships on commodities and services delivery and those kinds of things. And we're in this place where there are things where we have to own what we can do, but we've got to identify the gaps in what we can't do and how to accelerate and lean on our partners and mutually succeed side by side. That's way, way more important now than probably ever before. So I think the dynamics of how we compete completely shifted. That competition literally almost went away. It's really how we cooperate and how do we each mutually gain from that cooperation. So just some kudos to you guys for your thoughts around where you're going, because you guys are, for what you're doing, at least personally, I think you're spot on. Sorry, Giampaolo, I cut you off.
No, absolutely. It was brilliant to what you just said, and also what our other guests said. And Josh, I think that it's been really an equalizer to have the COVID for the first year in history, an event that sent us all packing. And the only thing, rather than packing, it sent us all back home to do our homeworks like if we were back to school. And this has been a great moment for all of us and for our companies to reanalyze our mistakes and what we could modify, better, tweak. So I think a lot of entrepreneurs have gone through this period with a proactive mind. I think I like very much what you and Don just said about that. And again, I think we have to remember that companies are liquid entities, not solid. Every time we try to consider our enterprises as solid quants, I think we were preparing for disaster. And because the world is liquid, and I think we need to realize that companies correspond and answer to the same laws of nature as anything else. What I want to add, though, is that I think in this moment, management can have a little bit of a revenge, because out of this situation, there would be more emphasis on quality versus quantity. So it's a sort of a revenge of quality over quants. And I think quants, of course, will be still necessary, because we need to categorize and bring back to indexes and ratios that our mind can create assumptions on. But I think quality really will be the pivotal element, because we've all been trained to fly instrumental, and we cannot fly instrumental just for the reason that Dolan said. We can't plan 5 years ahead, let alone 10 like the Japanese used to do. So navigating by side what we were trained to do, but we have to park these old skills and blend with our instrumental flight capabilities to create a thorough form of piloting and flying our aircrafts to live through these events, because I don't think that this is going to leave us anytime soon. The liquidity, not the COVID. I'm saying just the liquidity of the world, the fact that it's a magmatic environment. And as I say, anytime we try to reconduce it to a solidity, we're making mistakes. We have fissures and cracks in our system, and we prepare for our companies to fail. So I think we need to remain really on the ball of our shoes, of our feet, and really be reactive to whatever the situation throws at us, and we have to be responsive. So thanks all for a beautiful feedback that you have presented on this element. Thank you very much.
Giampaolo, could you also share your perspective for investors? So what should be the key focus of investors in the current environment?
Well, let's compartmentalize it. And I'm repeating myself. I think that particularly startups in the tech environment have to be very attentive to being able to reach critical mass as soon as possible, which means being able to write the plot of their own book completely, bravely, without being ashamed or afraid to confront themselves with the image that they see in the mirrors as founders, because they gotta go the extra mile and see if their venture is a real venture or is just a good idea. But that wouldn't have the merits to stand as a venture on its own. It could be perhaps coupled to some other people's ventures or merged into some other larger existing ventures. There are several ways that you can save the day without running your own company. But I think you want to make sure that the company can reach critical mass, because if you reach critical mass, it can attract the investors. To attract the investors, you got to show them the full plot of the book, because as I was just saying several times in the last few weeks, I mean, investors are like the publishers of the book. They need to see the full plot. You cannot sell them a chapter of the time, because a chapter of time doesn't get you anywhere near revenue generation, especially in the eyes of the investors, even if you believe you can reach it. And you might even reach it. The point is, investors cannot crystal ball the future, so they would tend not to believe you in good faith, even if they assume that you're in good faith. So I think you want to make that extra effort to design completely your venture in a way that you can show really what's going to happen when it's full.
Okay. We don't hear Giampaolo again. Probably my next question would be to you, Don. Probably you also observed that some number of funds, venture capital funds started investing not only smart money, but human capital to their portfolio companies and startups. And we see investors more hands-on with their portfolio. What do you think about these new forms of collaboration, more of hands-on approach to startups and their portfolios, or what would be the new formats post-COVID and integration between investors and entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I make sure I understand it correctly, no, I think that we're going to see investors move a lot closer to the. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think about this, but I think we're going to see investors move a lot closer, and for a couple of reasons. The first is we've experienced this whole new adventure with COVID, where we've seen supply chains break, we've seen companies fail because they're what would be a normal business, what we would consider. I'll use my events company client as a example. What we would normally just take for granted, which is we're going to have an event. The event's going to teach people things, and we're going to sell from stage, and we're going to do stuff, and things are going to happen. Kind of the Tony Robbins model. We'll pick on poor Tony today. But when you kind of take that model and you break it, it's not one of the things that we ever thought would break. So I think investors are looking much more carefully at a business, and they want to. And there's probably a personal inclination to be closer to that business, at least not as a hands-off observer, but much more of a participant in the direction of the business. And almost, it would be interesting, Giampaolo, to kind of hear your thoughts, but I would look at investors kind of looking at businesses not only as a place to. I love your statement about I'm the publisher of your book. That's really what an investor does. They help you get to where you're going to go, and they've got to believe your story and your plot. And if that's the case in today's economic climate, then investors going to probably want to become, to a degree, more of an advisor into they're going to share their experience. They're going to ask deeper questions. It's going to be a more thoughtful experience. And I think it's going to change that. It's definitely going to change the dynamic. We'll see investors. I think we're going to see the shift of what investors do in that decision process is different. But, I think we've talked a little bit about it before around there's a much more of a, and Giampaolo, you just mentioned it, there's much more of a concern around bringing supply chain closer and having a plan A and a plan B and possibly a plan C. So what do those things look like? Where I've been in, other opportunities where it's just been, let's just do a plan A and let's charge into it and let's go for it. So I think we're going to see a shift. And I don't know what it's going to shape out to be, but there are lots of great opportunities out there for investors today. I hope that helps. I'm interested in other thoughts.
Thank you. And let's do the final round of comments on the new forms of collaboration between serial entrepreneurs and investors. just the final outline. Mike, you wanted to add something?
Yes, actually, I spent a lot of time really trying to figure out where investors are and how they're going to be dealing with this. Because, you know, I've always had the partnership model and the partnership approach in terms of anybody that works with us, you know, that we're partners in this vision of what we're paving the way for the future of transportation mobility. And so the challenges that investors are going through are literally the exact same challenges that we're going through as founders and startups in terms of what are their lifeboat strategies. Are they going to have to deploy capital into other startups because they're they've invested too much in one area, and now it's like, are they going to let them sort of die as a company, or like how are they going to do new investments and such? And so you know, that's the part, having a sort of a partnership approach and is going to be critically important sort of moving forward. But the savvy investors, and this is the best investors I've seen right now, they knew that we were going to be going into a down economy. We didn't know exactly when. We were due for a recession, and the best ones stockpiled a lot of cash going into this, so they're able to make moves on companies to basically get be able to invest in great companies at a discount. You know, recessions happen, and you know, it just it's gone through history, and so you know, it's a great opportunity for investors to be able to invest in great companies at more realistic valuations. Startups were too greedy with respect to the valuations they were expecting, based off of not having sound business model. They're having more of they're selling a moonshot as opposed to having proper unit economics that could be resilient towards a lot of different factors and variables, and it's really bringing things back down to reality. So it's a great thing for investors. It's just that they're, it's sort of burst that bubble a little bit in terms of these crazy valuations and those kinds of companies that have no business models and like maybe a 10-year horizon, to be able to potentially break even. Some of those companies are going to exist, but a lot of them are going to just sort of fizzle out. It goes back to basic fundamentals of business and strong unit economics and understanding the marketplace and thinking about things in a way that can generate cash flow. So I just wanted to echo a little bit of that on Dolan's point about opportunities for investors.
Thank you for this note on more alignment of interest between investors and entrepreneurs, also in terms of valuation. And Josh, would you also comment on the new ways of cooperation and new more hands-on involvements of investors?
So I bootstrapped all the companies I've owned, so I've never had external investors. So I honestly wouldn't be able to comment on it. I mean, the only thing I could say is my own viewpoint, which is, you have companies like WeWork or Uber, like Mike was saying, they're losing as much money as their revenue is. And especially in an environment like this, I wonder whether the appetite for that type of growth will still remain, or whether both the investor and the company need to create a more profitable plan along the way to get there. That's the one question I have. How does that affect valuations? How does that affect which companies we invest in? Do we invest in losses for the future gain? Like, can we afford to do that? And then also, does that impact whether we have these portfolio companies where it's all or nothing, where we're investing this money, we're spending a lot, and most of them end up losing, and there's the one or two big winners? Does that get changed a little bit? And I'm definitely seeing from my entrepreneurial circles, there's more awareness from an entrepreneur side that it's either like you go broke or you make it in going the VC route. And I'm seeing more and more pushback from an entrepreneur standpoint of, do we want to do that? So this is where I really don't have the answer. I have more questions than I do have answers at this point.
Thank you, Josh and Swaroop.
Yeah, I think so this should have applied whether we had COVID or not, but it's the scrappiest of investors, scrappiest of entrepreneurs who will get funded right now, right? So even though, like how Josh said, he's bootstrapped most of his company. So he's the one who has most leverage right now, right? So he's not losing money. So when he can say no is where those are the ones investors will chase. The biggest difference that I personally found was all these years, because of this connection that I have to Silicon Valley, it was always less about funding companies which are distributed, because they would always be like, oh, you need to have all your engineers here, spend a lot of money, and then raise more money and increase valuation. So it was like this caught in a vicious circle. And I think Mike was talking about that, which is why companies just don't end up being profitable. And I think that was changing anyway, and now that's been accelerated. So it doesn't matter where your team is. So you can have a completely remote team, and then if you're the strappiest company in that space, you're the one that's going to get funded. As simple as that, right? So, and then of course you have your unit economics and any other factors that come in.
Thank you. And your final remark, Dolan?
I know we're right at the wall of time. So I love the comments. I think we've struck on some things that are really, really important. There's a guy out there I'm a huge fan of. His name is Jim Quick, and Jim recently wrote a book. And one of the things he talks about is S3. Do simple, small steps. Do them quickly. And I love sort of your comment around the scrappiest. I think being an entrepreneur means every day we get up and we go lead our company, and we put our pants on and go do what we've got to go do. At least as guys, we do that. I don't know. Be careful about that. But so I think those are really, really, really good observations. Probably my final thought is just a tip of the hat to Mike. And for your hackathon and ending up with an app that helped first responders get to and from work and get to where they needed to be to go take care of other people is really cool, dude. It's the fact that you were able to solve a problem, keep your vision and your dream alive, and do the thing you needed to do, but by impacting the lives of other people that made their jobs easier. Just nicely done, man. That's very cool.
Thank you, Don. And Gianpaolo, what are your final remarks for today?
Well, in a world that changes at the drop of a hat, I like all of what I heard today. Really very, very sensible feedback. And Josh, if I can quip, it's very good you ask questions. Keep asking yourself questions, because there's never a stupid question. There are only stupid answers. So I think an entrepreneur's job is to ask himself or herself a lot of questions. Business, by definition, is tricky and treacherous and unknown. Otherwise, it wouldn't be business. So thank you all, and I wish you a good day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So, and I welcome you to our other formats to participate. You can also use the opportunity to address our audiences with a keynote or masterclass in your business and in your industry with some of the disruptive technologies you would like to share with your peers and potential investors. And in 15 minutes, we'll just have a new keynote from one of the Amazon #1 authors of a bestseller, Staying on the Mechanical Bull, The Power of Resilience in Startup Entrepreneurship by Cheryl Conti. So also please join this masterclass, and see you all at our new sessions of Startup Leaders Club. And please stay in touch, stay healthy, and keep up with the current situation and succeed. You all have very good opportunities at hand with a very sound approach, and we think that there will be more and more collaboration opportunities between VC investors and entrepreneurs, and more of the alignment of interest between those groups, and we'll keep up with the community development. Thank you so much.